Sand dunes made of millions of finely divided sand particles. I have a few million sand grains right here. Unfortunately, they've become mixed with pebbles and pieces of gravel and coarse sand as well. But some of it is beach sand. Can you suggest a way how I might separate the bits and pieces from this mixture? Well, if I have a sieve or some sort of straining device, maybe I could use that. I could pour the mixture into it and shake it around for a few seconds, and very soon the fine particles, the sand, fine and coarse sand, go through, and some of the small stones, the larger stones, stay behind. Now what if I want to separate this mixture? Well, I could use another sieve or strainer, this time a bit finer than the first one. And this time only the fine pieces of sand will go through, the coarse sand stays behind. So that's one way of separating the bits and pieces of a mixture of sand and stone. But there are other ways of separating the same sort of mixture without doing anything at all. Let the wind do the work for you. Here's the same mixture once again, and I'll simply tip it out and we'll wait for the wind to blow. You might say, he'll be waiting a long time. Ah, no, we happen to have a wind machine in the form of an electric fan right here. Now you watch the bits and pieces of the mixture as the wind starts to blow. Right? Immediately, some of the fine sand grains blow away. In fact, they're going off the edge of the table right now. I can see them in the millions going over the edge of the table. And if you look at the original mixture here, you notice that the larger stones, the pebbles, the pieces of gravel, are staying right where they are. Some of the smaller stones are actually starting to move, and they roll across the table, or they move a little bit away from the pile. But if we leave that fan long enough, and if we allow for other things moving the bits and pieces around, in real life, maybe water from rivers, water from the rain would spread the bits and pieces out, and then the sand would be blown away. In other words, the wind does all the work of separating the bits and pieces. And very soon you'd have stones here, small stones and large sand grains there, and right off the edge of the table, the little fine sand grains, gone for metres down the track. And that's the sort of thing that happens in deserts all the time. If you look at some of the deserts in the centre of Australia, very often you see a lot of red sand and red stones, red pebbles. If you look more closely at those sand grains and the rocks, you find other interesting things as well. Here's an aerial shot of the Simpson Desert. Now you'll notice that there are lots of long grooves, some of them stretching for hundreds of kilometres. Those grooves have been formed over millions of years by the action of the wind, blowing sand away and forming long grooves. There's another very interesting desert in the centre of Australia called the Stony Desert. And if you look at the Stony Desert, you find just what the name tells you. Lots and lots of stones. In fact, it looks very much like the stones that we had right here in front of the fan. Those stones in the Stony Desert are called gibbers. It's called a gibber desert sometimes because gibber is the Aboriginal word for stones. Well, let's get rid of the Stony Desert and go back to the sand dunes. We can make some sand dunes very easily by turning the fan off and then putting some little heaps of sand on the table. There's one there. Make it a little bit higher. A couple of others, smaller one there, another one over here, perhaps one over there as well. And we'll set the wind going, and you'll see on a small scale what happens in the real world when wind blows over loose, finely divided particles of sand. Watch those little heaps of sand and you may see some changes in shape. The wind is blowing, look at that. Already the sand is moving away. The wind is coming from this direction. Look what's happening. On the direction from which the wind is coming, it's gradually spreading out so that there's a more gradual slope. You see that on that one there? You may notice it on this one as well, and certainly that one there. The side away from the wind becomes more steep. And so each of those little heaps of sand forms a sand dune. It's very much the shape of a sand dune as you know it from visiting the beach. Gradual slope here, steeper slope down there. You may notice something else as well. They're actually creeping along. They're creeping along all the time, very slowly. Sand is rolling up here, down there, up here, down there, and some of it's leaving as well. And one of them's almost left the picture over there. And that's what happens all the time with real sand dunes. And they're very beautiful, whether they're at your coast or like these in Colorado, which form a magnificent park of sand dunes. Those are huge sand dunes, some of them some of them hundreds of metres high, and the sand is moving all the time. Sand dunes themselves are beautiful things which move, but there are some plants that are clever enough to actually put down roots in those moving sand dunes and hold them up for a while and actually go through their life cycle right there in the dunes. Have a look at this.